People, it's really disappointing that it's 2024 and we still have anti progressive elements in our society, such as Shannon Sharpe and Umar Johnson, keeping this twisted thinking alive and playing right into the hands of white racism's principle of divide and conquer. So I'm talking about the issue of colorism, this whole light skin, dark skin thing, good hair, bad haired, house slave, field slave. It's ridiculous. They took the chains off us a long time ago. So now it's time to wake up, take the chains off your own mind, and stop thinking like a slave. Part one, we're going after Shannon Sharpe. Part two, Umar Johnson is the target. So this whole twisted way of thinking goes back to the antebellum South. And I shouldn't say just the South because there was slavery in the North too. Although you would never know it if you went through, public schools in this country. Because I went to public schools in New York from nursery school through high school, then attended private college in New York City, and never once was there any mention of slavery north of the Mason-Dixon line. And it wasn't until I graduated from college and started studying American history on my own that I learned about slavery in the North, and particularly in New York, which is where I grew up. So a quick digression, slavery ended in New York in 1817. That's when they freed all the slaves over the age of 40 because they were considered useless to the workforce at that age. And you can imagine back then, 40 was like being 80 is today. Then in 1827, they freed the rest of the slaves. And if you want to do further research on that, the slave revolts of 1712 and 1741 in New York City are pretty interesting. Especially the one in 1741, because whites and blacks, fought on the same side in that revolt. So anyway, back to the subject at hand. During slavery, light-skinned slaves were treated better than dark-skinned slaves. That's just a fact. It was called light-skin privilege. And the reason that the light-skinned slaves were treated better is because they were the master's children, which to me is one of the most reprehensible aspects of slavery, that you could raise your own children as slaves. I mean, that's just disgusting. I mean, the white mind was able to come up with all sorts of justifications for enslaving Africans. Look how dark they are. That's God's curse. They're not Christian. They're savages. They live in the bush. They run around half naked. They're better off being slaves. This is God's will. But how could you possibly justify raising your own children, raising your own flesh and blood as slaves? There's no way to justify that unless you admit, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, unless you admit that you're a lowlife. If you talk to African Americans from the 30s, 40s, 50s, you'll come to realize that their racial politics are screwed up. Now, there are exceptions. But for the most part, their racial politics are screwed up. And their words and their actions betray them every time. They're the ones that use expressions like good hair, which can only mean what? That black hair is no good, black hair is bad. They're the ones that use expressions like the white man, the man, meaning what? What are you then, the boy? The ones that are exceptions from that era, it's because they went through some type of conditioning process through information, education, activism, so they were able to reject the message being sent out by white racist American society that blacks are inferior. But the other group, the larger group, they have internalized to a lesser or greater extent the lie of black inferiority. And because their minds are enslaved, they spend their lives kowtowing, trying to appease, placate, and seek validation from white society, trying to show, hey, boss, I'm a good Negro. When I was like 20, a longtime family friend, he was born in the early 30s, and me and his kids grew up together. He had a son that was the same age as me. Anyway, he had a prominent position in the real estate division of an insurance company in Manhattan. And he once told me and his kids that, this is a direct quote, the white man is only going to let you get so far. Right? Wow. But this is how they thought, or I should say, this is how they think, because they're still out there. My parents were both born in the 1930s in South Carolina, and we know that South Carolina was racist to the core. In fact, they were the first state to secede from the nation. My mother, born in Charleston, South Carolina, and my father on nearby James Island. And James Island, there is a battle there, Civil War battle fought there, which is depicted in the movie Glory with Denzel Washington. So imagine walking home from school every day as a kid and passing houses like this one. Imagine seeing these racist signs all over town. Imagine seeing the Confederate flag on public buildings such as Town Hall, the police department, the library, the symbol of America's enemy, proudly displayed all over the town. Of course, I had to sit in the back of the bus. All the schools were segregated. Klan marches were a common sight, and there was a hanging tree in the middle of town. Certain places, they were not allowed to go in and eat, separate water fountains, the whole nine. In the movie theaters, I don't get this one, but they had to sit in the balcony. Who wouldn't want to sit in the balcony at the movies? Today's theaters, most of them don't even have balconies, but yeah, that one I don't get. So the lynching in this picture, this took place in August 1906. The youngest of the three victims photographed here is 15 years old. But the point that I'm trying to drive home is that you can't have lived through radical Reconstruction, Jim Crow legalized segregation in the South, and come out on the other side of that unscathed, undamaged psychologically. Now, I grew up in a completely different environment. I was born in 1960 in the Bronx, New York. My racial politics are vastly different from that of my parents. Not even, remotely similar. I grew up in what I like to call the Ali era. I was born the same year that Ali won the gold medal at the Olympics in Rome, and he had a very strong influence on me as a child. He spoke out on the social issues of the day, and actually because of him, my first career ambition at the age of 6 was to be a professional boxer, and I wanted to be 6'3", 210 pounds, just like Ali. And I set that goal for myself at the age of 7. And crazy as it sounds, at 21, I actually achieved that goal. It's crazy. James Brown was another early influence on me. I loved me some James Brown. I started listening to him in elementary school, started collecting every single one of his albums. And when I was in elementary school, like 3rd or 4th grade, maybe 2nd grade. But anyway, my elementary school in Queens in New York was predominantly black. We had a black principal, a black vice principal. And I remember we had this cultural event one day. So yeah, I was dressed in dashiki. A lot of my friends were dressed in dashikis. And, we were sampling food and stuff like that. But this song, I'm Black and I'm Proud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, was playing over and over again in the black background. That's the only song that they played that day. And, we're all, screaming it. Yeah, I'm black and I'm proud. Say it loud. We Need Liberation, another great song from James Brown. King Heroin. I mean, imagine listening to that as a kid. But by that time I was, in my early teens. And, that would tend to make you anti-drugs, that's for sure. And, to this day, I've never done drugs. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I don't take prescription drugs of any kind, I don't take aspirin, I don't drink beer, wine, I don't drink no stinking coffee, and I don't drink no stinking unfiltered tap water either. So, Super Bad, another, great song from James Brown. I remember also listening a lot back then to Edwin Starr. That would definitely help you put war in perspective. War I despise because it means the destruction of innocent lives. Wow, very powerful. And you can imagine the influence like that would have on, on a child. And again, I was born, at the birth of the civil rights movement. I mean, Martin Luther King used to come on television, and I'd watch him, giving his speeches there, and I wouldn't think too much about it, but Looking back on it now, I realize, yeah, those things definitely, sunk into my subconscious and had an influence on me. Images of the Black Panthers were prominent. All of us growing up, we knew about them, and we respected the work that they were doing in the community. So my generation, again, vastly different from those of my parents. We didn't share the same fears, insecurities, and sense of inferiority. So these psychological afflictions that earlier generations suffered, my generation, if you were attuned to the culture, you didn't suffer from those afflictions. My generation, we fought. We didn't kowtow, try to placate or whatever. We spoke out and we fought. That's what we're known for. Now, there's something I forgot to mention about the James Brown song, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and how important that song was. So you had James Brown singing, I'm Black and I'm Proud. You had Stokely Carmichael proclaiming Black Power. You had Adam Clayton Powell, congressman from Harlem, proclaiming Black is beautiful, baby. So it's important because that's when the culture was making the transition from the term Negro and the term Black. So my generation, being born in 1960, I never embraced the term Negro. Like we never growing up, me and my friends, like we never referred to ourselves as Negroes. We would only call one another Negro if you were making fun of somebody. Right? Negro was like a bad word. Of course, not as bad as the other N word. So, again, that was a very, important period for the culture. I participated in my first protest march, when I was in like second or third grade. And I remember marching in the streets. We were in Queens near our elementary school, PS 30, in Rochdale Village. And I remember a white guy, because we were stopping traffic too. We were marching. It was a whole bunch of us, and I remember stopping the traffic. It was my mother brought me and my brother out there. And anyway, this white guy sticks his head out the window and says, "Hey, this is not the way to bring about change." And of course, what he was really saying is that, white society wants to control the change, and white society wants to decide the terms of the change, which means, in fact, there would never be any change. So I asked my mother a few years ago, what was that protest march about? Because like I said, I was in second and third grade. I didn't really know what was going on. I'm like, what was that protest march about? And she didn't remember. But just looking back on that era, I'm pretty sure it had to do with community control of the schools, with the community, meaning the parents, being more actively involved in determining and approving the curriculum, wanting a curriculum that was challenging and also more relevant to the students' daily life, right? Not something just so liberal and irrelevant to what we were experiencing. Now, when I was in junior high school, so now we're in the 70s now. so this is like 73, 74, and I'm on the cross country team in the junior high school. So we're running through a Belmont Lake State Park in North Babylon. And of course, as blacks back then, we were all sporting our afros. And after we finished running, we started walking. We're walking through the trail. So I'm walking with a group of my white friends, they're on the cross country team. And as we're walking, we passed this black guy coming in the opposite direction. He was older than us, about 18 or 19. And I was the only black person in the group at that time. I mean, there were plenty of my black friends on the cross-country team, but for some reason I was the only black in this, group of about 5 or 6. And the black guy says, hey, what's happening, brother? And I said, yeah, hey, how you doing? And so we walked past him, and one of my white friends says to me, do you know that guy? And then another white friend answered before I could even answer. He said, all black people know each other, right? So that was the time. That was, how we were living back then. It was much more, a sense of unity and togetherness, and a sense of we were making progress. So again, I say all this to point out why my racial politics are so vastly different from the politics of a segregation era Negro, such as my parents. And it's not that I didn't have to go out of my way, seeking information here and going here, traveling there. I mean, it was a part of my daily life. It was something that I was, bombarded with, assaulted with, as a part of my daily life, growing up in the 60s and the 70s. So this brings me to the modern day Negro, Shannon Sharpe. So Shannon Sharpe was apparently, from what I hear, one of the greatest tight ends to ever play the game of football. I don't follow football. I follow basketball and boxing. Those are my sports. But Shannon Sharpe was inducted into the Hall of Fame some years ago. So apparently he really had it going on the football field. And then he went into broadcasting, and that's when I picked up and started watching him when he landed on the show Undisputed, hosted by himself and Skip Bayless. So. And I have to put him on blast for the things that he said about Devin Booker, because, the things that he said were really like incredulous. And I can't believe how ignorant the things that are he said, and then to state it publicly. It's like, Jesus Christ, man. We really need you out here using your platform, going public with a back to the plantation movement in terms of thinking and mentality. Man, please. So for those of you that don't follow the NBA, Devin Booker plays for the Phoenix Suns alongside Kevin Durant. He's one of the top players in the NBA today, capable of going out on any given day and busting out 40 points. He was friends with Kobe and influenced by Kobe. Kobe, took him under his wings, and he's basically adopted the same Mamba mentality that Kobe had. He's tough as nails. One of the things I like about him, he's a notorious trash talker on the court, which makes it, more entertaining to watch. And he doesn't back down from anyone. He's gotten into it with everybody, from Paul George, Rondo, Klay Thompson, Luka Doncic, Marcus Cousins, and even 7-foot-something Nikola Jokic. So he's very good at getting under his opponent's skin. He's very good at the psychological warfare, and he's good at getting technicals called on the opposing players. He even got Klay Thompson ejected from a game. This is the first time in Klay's entire career in the NBA. And, Booker manipulated him and got a rise out of him, got him thrown out of the game. So, this is who Devin Booker is, okay? During the playoffs a few seasons back, it was Phoenix Suns versus the Los Angeles Lakers, and Devin Booker was doing as usual, tearing it up on the court, trash talking, scoring buckets, making his teammates better, pissing off the opposing players with his psychological warfare, Mamba mentality. This time in one particular play, Devin Booker got ejected for pushing Dennis Schroeder while Dennis was in the air during the act of shooting, right? So there's the photo right there. The refs called it a flagrant 2 foul. Good night, Devin Booker. You're out of here. That was just Devin being Devin. Mamba mentality. Now, the next day on the show, Skip and Shannon were discussing the play, discussing the game. And Shannon said that NBA star Devin Booker is trying to prove he's not soft. Claims that he's suffering from light skin disease. So apparently in the mind of Shannon Sharpe, being light-skinned is a disease. And something that I realized, because I don't think in the twisted way that Shannon Sharpe does in terms of dividing the culture in terms of light-skin, dark-skin. But if I go back to that photo, it just hit me that Dennis Schroeder is dark-skinned. So Shannon probably took offense that there was a light-skinned black man committing a flagrant foul against a dark-skinned black man, who Shannon, being dark-skinned, probably identifies more. This is the way he's twisted back to the plantation mind probably thinks, this back to the plantation thinking. He says, I think, this is a direct quote, I think the thing is what Booker is suffering from is that light skin disease. A lot of times they say you're soft. And so he's trying to say, I'm not soft. Like, what? Are you serious? Oh, there was nothing out of the ordinary for Devin Booker to do what he did in that game. Nothing out of the ordinary. It was Devin Booker being Devin Booker. The more intelligent thing to say would have been like, yeah, well, Devin was close with Kobe, and he's, embodiment of that Mamba mentality spirit. That would have been a more intelligent and a more accurate depiction of what happened. So then Skip says, oh, is that what that was? And then Shannon says, just like this, yep, that's what that was. I mean, just like that. Yep, that's what that was. Jesus. I mean, we don't need this type of backwards, reactionary, divisive, back to the plantation thinking, having a public forum to spew twisted misinformation to all of white America. I've never heard of light skin disease before Shannon said it. And I played sports from starting with Little League baseball when I was like 7 or 8. And then when I was 10, transitioned to Little League basketball. Played 3 different sports in junior high school, cross country, gymnastics, and basketball. Played varsity sports in high school. Played varsity sports in college. Traveled up and down the East Coast, even after college, competing in martial arts for a couple of decades. Traveling up and down the East Coast, traveling throughout the South, traveling as far west as Texas. I never heard anything like that. Never heard any thing that light-skinned athletes are considered weak. Never heard of light-skin disease. I didn't know it was a disease, a bad thing for someone to be light-skinned. Never once came across this crazy thinking, but apparently it's a thing where Shannon grew up. So I'm not denying that he grew up hearing that or whatever. So, but it's a thing wherever he grew up, in the backwoods swamps, what other southern plantation, he used to pick cotton on as a little kid or whatever, because, I mean, he certainly sounds like a slave from the 1600s. So early on in the 2023 season, January 2023, Shannon was in attendance at a Lakers home game versus the Grizzlies. Shannon had good courtside seats there. And he gets into a shouting match with Dillon Brooks, who just happens to be another light-skinned player in the NBA. So Shannon was, yelling something, whatever, at Dillon Brooks after a play. And Dillon Brooks basically turned and told him, man, sit the F down and shut your mouth and be a spectator, okay? Stop trying to interject yourself into the game. So Shannon at that point loses it because he's going to not take that type of disrespect from someone who has light skin disease. I'm a dark skinned man. You can't talk to me like that. So Shannon gets up and he's like, okay, well, we'll do something then. Come on over, do something. And Shannon starts saying, you don't want none of this. Come on, you don't want none of this. They know they don't want none of this. They don't want none of this. He was so out of control, so unprofessional and out of line that security had to escort him off the floor, right? Taken off the floor by security. And that picture in the lower right is Steven Adams, one of Dillon Brooks' teammates, also trying to, tell Shannon, yo, dude, chill out, man. You're an idiot. You're making a complete fool of yourself. So this man clearly sees the world through the distorted lens of color. Now I know some of you are going to say, listen, give the man a break now. He's not all bad, and he's probably illiterate. Right? Illiterate, meaning someone who can read but just doesn't. So he's probably never read a nonfiction book his entire life, unless it was for school, and really didn't learn to speak English at a decent level until after he was brought on as a commentator, and they probably had to hire an English tutor for him for that. And listen, a guy who has like issues like this with the light skin, dark skin thing, but yet supposedly the story is, the word out on the street is that he only dates white women. Okay. So that's crazy, man. What a crazy mixed up, contradiction. But anyway, I don't knock him for that. If he only dates white women, that's his choice. He can do whatever he wants in that regard, right? I mean, as a man, I'm not going to limit myself when it comes to love, sex, romance, right? I've dated Asians, blacks, Hispanics, whites. I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem if and when race is one of the factors that attracted you to the relationship, right? For a black man to say, I only date white women, I mean, to me, that's twisted. Because in our culture, we have every shade, right, imaginable. So now, what I'm saying about race being a factor in the decision if you consider someone like Joel Embiid, who plays for the 76ers, he's from Cameroon, right? Grew up there in Africa and everything, comes over here, ends up marrying a white woman, right? I find it hard to believe that the fact that this woman is white wasn't one of the things that attracted him to it, because, in the culture where he grew up, it was something that he didn't have access to, and there was this, whole forbidden fruit syndrome, right? Same thing with Mark Matabani, author of Kafir Boy. This guy grew up in South Africa and caught the full brunt of apartheid, strict separation of the races, police brutality, political oppression, violent response to any acts of dissension. When it came to white women, they were the forbidden fruit. No touch, no talk, no eye contact. Comes to America, writes the book Kafir Boy, marries a white woman, right? There's no way in the world that I believe that race was not a significant factor in his decision to marry outside his race. No way I believe that. And in my opinion, he probably thought it was a feather in his cap. And that's the type of twisted thinking that I don't agree with when it comes to interracial dating. Now, when it comes to marriage, there's something called cultural affinity. In other words, if I'm rolling with a white chick and she's upbeat, positive, enthusiastic, she looks sexy, yeah, we can go out and have a great time and whatever. But for marriage, if I'm rolling with a white chick and she never heard of Earth, Wind, and Fire, she never heard of Parliament Funkadelic, she never saw New Jack City, she never saw the 5 Heartbeats. It's like, yo, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think I can handle that, in a marriage. But this is my brother. He married a white woman some years back, later divorced. And we're at a family gathering at couple of whatever after the marriage, whatever, a couple of years after the marriage, we had some family gathering, either Thanksgiving or Christmas, like that, and whatever. And this was shortly after the OJ trial. So the OJ thing came up, and she said, the only reason that he got found not guilty, the only reason he got off scot-free is because the jurors was all black, that all-black jury, that's why. So this is how the white mind views the world, right? Even though it's distorted, inaccurate, and lacks any truth or even any common sense, right? This is how the white mind works. And this is something that I could not deal with, in a marriage. Now, the real reason that OJ got found not guilty is because Johnny Cochran, his defense attorney, kicked the butt of the prosecution, right? Presented a much better case, right? Prosecution did a horrible job. That's why. So, but for her to say that he got off because it was an all-black jury is such a twisted way to look at the world, because black and Hispanic juries convict black and Hispanic criminals every single day in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, in Manhattan, right? So this is just absurd for her to say that. But she's going to say that about black juries when the exact opposite is true of white juries, especially if it's a black victim. We know that we cannot expect justice for a black victim when the jury is all white. It was an all-white jury that said that the cops that beat Rodney King within an inch of his life were not guilty of any crime, despite the videotape evidence. All right? They said, well, you didn't see what happened before the video started. Yeah, jury, either did you. Unbelievable. It was an all-white jury that let the murderers of Emmett Till go scot-free. And there's no doubt that they were guilty because they later admitted it in an interview to whatever that magazine was, Life magazine or Time magazine, right? Kidnapped, tortured, brutally beaten, murdered. All white jury, overwhelming evidence. No, not guilty. That's an all white jury. Tamir Rice, 12 years old, gunned down in a park in, I believe it was Detroit. Had a toy gun in his waistband. The cops roll up. The pig on the passenger side gets out, opens fire within 2 seconds. Nothing like get your hands up, drop, stop, police, whatever. Just gets out, and within 2 seconds of arrival, they gun him down. So the guy pulls up, get out of the car, gun him down. And there's videotape, anyone can go watch it. What did the white district attorney say? The white district attorney said, we can't second guess our police officers. What? I mean, that's exactly what we need to do, is to second guess our police officers. But this is what the white district attorney said. And of course, he controls the grand jury. And of course, because he handpicked the grand jury, and he was the only lawyer present at present during the grand jury, of course, he got the decision what he wanted, which is, yeah, they're not going to even go forth with a trial. Unbelievable. Trayvon Martin, found not guilty by a predominantly white jury. There was only one person of color on the jury, a Hispanic lady, right? No doubt that he was guilty of murder. We have the call that he made to the 911 where he said, these people always get away. And we have the call where he's saying, yeah, he's got something in his hand. Yeah, he had Skittles and a cell phone in his hand, and Zimmerman knew that, but he's already trying to set up a case for himself down the road of stand your ground. So he already had it in his mind from the time he called the police. And then he says, oh, yeah, they always get away, and I'm going to follow him. So that he wanted to make sure this one wouldn't get away, and that's what he did. And, of course, the predominantly all-white jury said, no, not guilty, not guilty. So imagine the NBA decided to indulge Shannon with his twisted thinking, and they put together an all light-skinned team, right? So we're going to go with, on the light-skinned team, we're going to go with Devin Booker and Klay Thompson. We're going to go with DeJounte Murray. We're going to go with Steph Curry. We're going to go with, oh man, I forgot dude's name from the Knicks who just busted out 50 points a couple of months ago. Anyway, we got him. We got our man from the Celtics. We got Anthony Davis. We got Giannis Antetokounmpo. We got Ingram. And we got, for coach, we got a choice. We could either bring in Ty Lue or Doc Rivers, right? And for the dark-skinned team, they're going to be going up against LeBron. They're going to be going up against Zion, of course. They're going to be going up against Jimmy Butler. We're going to go against Siakam. We're going to be going against Joel Embiid. And we got my other man here from Miami Heat also. So we could let Shannon coach the dark-skinned team, or better yet, I got a better idea for him. But unfortunately, guys like, dark-skinned team, they got James Harden also. But we can't have guys like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Dame Leonard. All these guys are eliminated from the game, right? Because they're medium skin, so they don't fit Shannon's narrative. So we're gonna not let Sharon. Well, we're not gonna let Shannon. Do the. I'll be the coach. We're gonna let him do the announcing, right? But imagine the conversation in the light skin locker room, right? From according to Shannon, right? Okay, men, this is an important game. This is not about the money or individual stats. We're playing tonight for the pride of an entire sub-race, the light-skin race. If we beat those darkies tonight, this could be the start of a movement that culminates with us breaking away and forming our own race, the light-skinned race. Tonight marks the birth of the tan man. If we win, I promise you that after the game, we'll go out and we'll all get us some white women. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Tan man. Right? It's your man Shannon S. covering the Lakers against Charlotte Hornets.
It's the light skinned Jackson Hayes bringing the ball up, passes to dark skinned Jared Vanderbilt. Jared Vanderbilt to the light skinned Anthony Davis. Light skinned dunks it and posterizes. Gets hit with a technical foul. Yep, Anthony Davis, light skin disease, trying to prove how tough he is. Yep, that's what that was.